With that, let me go ahead officially. We're going to open the meeting for the Puyallup City Council for April 1st. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we please have the clerk read the roll?
Deputy Mayor King. Present. Councilmember Gilliam.
Present.
Councilmember Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Present.
Councilmember Adler.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson. Present. Mayor Castro.
Present. Again, thank you all for being here this evening. We have a number of proclamations we're going to read, and we'll have pauses throughout this meeting this evening. So if there are moments where you would like to go ahead and leave, feel free to do so. During those pauses might be a little bit more appropriate, but again, you can do that whenever you would like. At this time, we usually acknowledge the youth in our audience. We have high school students who are here, but we're going to recognize you in a bit, so we'll go ahead and wait. Are there any other students from either the elementary schools, junior high, or high schools here in Puyallup? I see the back row there. If you'd like to go ahead and stand up, tell us your name and what school you go to, and if there's a purpose behind your being here this evening.
I go to Lawrence. I go to First Junior High. I'm here for assistance.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Young lady?
Oh, I graduated from Echo Ridge, but I'm not a...
Okay, well, you've retained that youth. And I'm looking, are there any other students? And we do that because we want to welcome you, and we hope that someday you actually sit up on the dais and you're the future leader of the city of Puyallup. So we want to make sure you're very welcomed. With that, let's move on to item number 1, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So
Motion. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Now we're going to move on to the proclamations, and we have 4 of them. That is probably the most we have ever had. And I will try to be as speedy as I can and yet be reverent when I read the proclamations. I guess we have so much going on in Puyallup, so many great things that people bring forward these proclamations, and it's very important that we recognize organizations, events that are just instrumental to our community. With that, I would like to give our first proclamation. We have guests in front of us from Pierce College, but I'd like to provide a proclamation for them. So, whereas Pierce College Puyallup has been a vital institution of higher learning in our community, providing accessible, innovative, and high-quality education to students of all backgrounds. And whereas Pierce College was originally founded in 1967 as Clover Park Community College and later became Pierce College District 11, serving students across multiple campuses in Pierce County. And whereas recognizing the need for expanded access to higher education in East Pierce County, local leaders, including former State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Frank Buster Brulette, as well as Marcus Gaspard and Dan Grimm, two dedicated state legislators and advocates for education, championed the establishment of a new campus in Puyallup. And whereas in 1987, Pierce College secured a permanent site in Puyallup, and in 1989, the Pierce College Puyallup campus officially opened its doors, beginning with modular classrooms and a vision for future growth. And whereas Pierce College Puyallup was recognized by the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges in 1999 as the state's 34th community and technical college and second college in Pierce County, Pierce College District 11. And whereas since its founding, Pierce College Puyallup has grown into a thriving educational institution, offering associate degrees, professional technical programs, and university transfer opportunities while maintaining a steadfast commitment to student success and workforce development. And whereas Pierce College Puyallup has been nationally recognized for its excellence in education, including being named top 10 finalist for the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence in 2021 and 2023, demonstrating its leadership in student achievement and equity. And whereas Pierce College Puyallup continues to serve as a cornerstone of local higher education and workforce training by strengthening the local economy, enriching the lives of its students and alumni through partnerships with local businesses, government, and community organizations. Now, therefore, I, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, Washington, do hereby encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing and celebrating the tremendous impact Pierce College Puyallup has on our community. Eyewitness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this first day of April 2025. Congratulations, Pierce College. Let's please give them a hand. I have a very long list of individuals I'd like to recognize from Pierce College, and then I will go ahead and give the proclamation to each one of you, and we can take a big photo together, okay? Before I acknowledge all of you, I would like to acknowledge the fact that I believe Councilmember Lauren Adler is a graduate of Pierce College. Am I correct, Councilmember Adler? And if I'm also correct, I believe you were the student body president. Is that correct, too? Okay, I'm sure you did a lot of, we could go down the list, and I think you'd be shaking your head continually, yes. But she was an outstanding graduate from there, and she, of course, has been very instrumental in our program of recognizing Pierce College. With that, we have Dr. Chio Flores, president of Pierce College, Puyallup, Holly Gorski, interim vice president of fiscal services, Marie Harris, director of operations for the chancellor, Yuritsi Lozano, vice president of learning and student success, Herbie Smith, director of donor and alumni relations, Aubrey Whitemarsh, president of the Associated Students of Pierce College District. We have Josue Gomez Grahiba, the student engagement senator for the Associated Students of Pierce College. And we have Haley Huber, student engagement coordinator. And I hope I got everyone. So with that, if you could all come forward and accept the proclamation. For the photo, if you like, go ahead and just open them up. And we know.
You three get a little closer. A little get closer. Perfect. Okay, is everyone ready? All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead.
Greetings, council members. My name is Charo Flores. As I said earlier, I'm president at Pierce College Puyallup. Would like to thank you for this recognition and for the partnership with the city. We are very fortunate to be in a very supportive environment and really are honored and grateful for this recognition and for the many other things that the city has done for the city of Puyallup, but then, of course, for our students and our community. So thank you again.
Thank you. So we, every week, of course, every year we have a week where we acknowledge Pierce College. We also acknowledge the Washington State University Research and Extension Center. We have a week where we honor them too. And the higher education institutions are very important in this community. They add tremendously to our economic wealth and give opportunities for our students to go on and really enhance their careers, their income, their other standards of living, and it's just a very valuable asset to have in this community. We already are known for having good K-12 education, but that other missing element that the legislators that I had mentioned in the proclamation recognized, the missing thing was the ability to go on to higher education and achieve those degrees that, again, allow students to really kind of reach for the stars and go on from there to four-year universities, et cetera. So I just want to bring that up. This is something we do on an annual basis. So with that, we're now going to move on to the Daffodil Proclamation. And I'm not kidding when I say that I look at the front row. It just reminds me of springtime. Daffodils start coming up, and beautiful young ladies in their, yellow dresses just remind me of the fields that used to proliferate throughout the Puyallup Valley. So now let's go ahead and have the proclamation for the Daffodil Festival. Whereas the Daffodil Festival has been an established tradition for over 92 years, which fosters community pride and showcases Puyallup as an excellent place to visit and live. Whereas what originated in 1926 as a modest garden party in Sumner is now the premier springtime festival, which attracts countless visitors to numerous events. Whereas the festival's event, parades, and royalty programs showcase the abilities of our young people, schools, community groups, and civic leaders, and promotes education, community pride, and volunteerism in Puyallup. And whereas the Daffodil Festival culminates with a grand floral parade, which this year will be held on April 5th, following the theme Growing Locally 2025. Whereas each year young ladies are selected from the senior classes of local high schools to become members of the Daffodil Festival Royal Court, and whereas the Queen and Princesses of the Royal Court serve as goodwill ambassadors in hundreds of appearances at schools, community centers, service clubs, businesses, and organizations throughout the area. Now, therefore, I, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, do hereby name the following members of the 2025 Daffodil Royal Court as ambassadors for the City of Puyallup during their reign, and express my confidence that they will represent their schools, communities, and our city with maturity, poise, and grace. And we have Princess Isabella from Puyallup High School. We have Princess Kennedy from Emerald Ridge High School. We have Princess Layla, Chief Leshai High School, and Princess Courtney from Rogers High School. And if they could all come forward to receive these proclamations, that would be wonderful.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you.
I'd like to have Bob Suter come forward. He's the director of the parade for the Daffodil Festival.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. 3 more days and a wake-up. And our court is especially powerful this year, is that they're bringing with them the best weather we've had in more than a decade.
Yay.
So the usual start time, 12:45, and the usual parade route, and we expect to see you all there. And I know that the princesses have some daffodil pens for you to purchase this year, which I believe is mandatory, right, ladies? So, so before you leave, please stop by. And finally, sir, on behalf of the Daffodil Festival, I would like to thank the mayor, the council, the entire city of Puyallup for the tremendous support that you give the Daffodil Festival and has always given the Daffodil Festival, especially during my 10, 12-year tenure as parade director. The LTAC money that the Daffodil Festival has received has done a great deal to promote the parade And if you're anywhere near Tacoma, you're going to see some, big advertisements on some big buses. And there's so many people moving in here that, believe it or not, some of them have never even heard of the Daffodil Festival. I also see Carrie Yanisak sitting behind us. The Puyallup Main Street Association has been extremely generous, not only with money, but with office space. And we move in there like we own the place. And like I say, 3 more days and a wake up, and we hope to see you all there in the parade or somewhere on the sidelines cheering these young ladies along. Thank you again.
Thank you. And Bob, Bob, if there's a rumor out there that Carrie Yanisak's a grand marshal. Is that correct?
Oh, that is correct. We try to work in ahead. Anitra and I are president-elect for next year, and we asked Carrie if he would be the grand marshal, and we were pleased and honored that he accepted. But now we can't enter the place unless we call him Grand Marshal. So it's gone to his head a little bit, I think. And, Lexi warned us about that, but we're living with it. And he's promised to be there, rain or shine, for next year's April 11th parade as our parade Grand Marshal.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, with that, and by the way, it was interesting that your comment regarding that new people who move here have really no idea how that the valley used to be covered with daffodil fields, the Van Laird farm. I used to go on hay rides when I was a kid out at their farm, and we tried to preserve some of that. I see we have a former council member, John Palmer, who is here, and I know he was very big in preserving daffodils in our new park that we have out at the Van Laird Park. So just to, again, remind people of just how important that flower is and the festival is to Puyallup. So again, thank you for that. We're now going to move on to the next proclamation, and that's for Tree City, USA. I just want to remind everybody here that at one time, we were a tree city, and then we kind of lapsed. And we decided that we wanted to become a tree city again, and we're always looking for ways to, in fact, kind of effectuate the fact that we're a tree city. It's not enough just to say you're a tree city, but we want, in fact, to make plantings and do things of that sort and live up to that reputation. So this is all part of an effort in Puyallup, so we get coverage for shade and for water management, et cetera, utilizing trees. So with that, I'll proceed. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day called Arbor Day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heat and cooling costs, moderate temperatures clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, whenever they are planted, are sources of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas from 2014 to 2017, the city of Puyallup was recognized as a Tree City, USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, which is a symbol of the city's dedication to the preservation of natural resources. In 2025, the city was recertified as a Tree City, USA. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Puyallup City Council that we officially recognize April 1st, 2025 as Tree City. Further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Eyewitness whereof, Mayor Jim Castama, I have a year to set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Puyallup. And if we could have Brian Molman come forward to accept this. He's with the Pierce Conservation District. Mm-hmm.
All righty. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Brian, and as stated, I work with the Pierce Conservation District as the Habitat Stewardship Program Manager. I was honored to be here last year when we were reintroduced into the Tree City program, and so I want to take a moment to just kind of brag a little bit about the accomplishments over the last year and just some of the mentality going forward. At PCD, we're proud of our joint efforts with the City of Puyallup through the Green Puyallup Partnership. It's through this effort that we aim to restore 350 acres of natural open space within your community. We do this largely through the volunteer elevated habitat stewardship program and currently have 5 active sites within your city that are consistently every month going through and pulling invasive species and adding in native plants, as the mayor was stating. So if there's a weekend, with a Saturday, we very likely have an event. Please join us. In 2024, we partnered to plant over 2,500 trees within the city in a handful of select natural open spaces. We estimate that these trees, once grown, will give us about 8 acres of increased urban canopy space, providing, as the mayor was saying, extra shade, habitat, water quality improvements. In 2025, we haven't, rested on our laurels just yet. We've already hosted 12 great events in this space, including a week-long outdoor classroom event with a local Cascade Christian High School. You may know them, they're just down the street, but they dedicated 4 full days, 6 hours out there, grueling with us. It was amazing, and we were able to get so much done, learn and teach from each other. Additionally, in January, as we had to make hard decisions about other trees in this space, we partnered with the city to have a tree planting event at Bradley Lake Park, installing a good 8 or 10 trees in that space to help boost the canopy significantly more than what was lost. Looking ahead, of course, we're only about, 3 months in? We're just getting into April now, so we have plenty of the year left over. A lot of events to come, so please join us in some of those, but I'd like to highlight 3 before I depart today, if you'll provide me that time. The first thing, coming up here at the end of April, we have Earth Day. We're hosting 4 work parties across the county, but 2 of which are going to be in the city of Puyallup. So please join us at either the Peck property or Silver Creek. Really amazing sites, and you'll be able to see a little different side of Puyallup that maybe you haven't seen just yet, and I think is really important. Next, if you'd like to know a little bit more about how our program works in conjunction with the city, we're hosting an open house on April 17th. It's a Thursday between 5 to 7 p.m. At this event, we'll be hosting 3 interactive stations where you can come talk to us just about anything, pretty much, as long as it's involving surface water quality. We'll be talking about rain gardens and cisterns, rain tanks, or habitat stewardship, that's more my station, as well as streamside restoration, or just general city projects that go towards benefiting the community's water. The last one that I'd like to talk about briefly is if you already know that you're a solid volunteer and you want to contribute a little bit more or know somebody in that realm, want to take on a project, I'm hosting a habitat stewardship training in May. I would love you to join in, and you can take an active, elevated ownership role within this community to help it for future generations. At the end of the day, I'm just very grateful to be in this city that supports us so strongly and supports these efforts to revitalize our communities. We look forward to continuing our work within the city of Puyallup to enhance urban open spaces, improve riparian habitats, and benefit both the environment and community. Thank you so much for all you do, and appreciate everything. Finish strong. Anywho, have a wonderful
Thank you,
night.
Brian. Brian, I appreciate what the Pierce Conservation District does, and I would encourage all people who are watching this or listening to it to go ahead and volunteer their time to assist you, but also to maybe engage in other activities that can, again, improve the number of trees we have with all the various benefits that they bring to this community. I know years ago, when I was first elected, I noticed there was a little sign out towards the Research Extension Center that said we were a tree city, and yet no one really knew that we were. So I found that quite a contradiction. So that's why we went ahead and engaged to make sure we were also recertified. So thank you for all that effort. I believe that we have a former council member Heather Shatko. She is, I believe, are you Silver Creek steward? You have a formal position with Tree City?
I've handed it off to somebody else. I've been out there since 2006.
Yeah, that's a problem with trying to retire. You know, when you're really good at what you do, it's hard to do. Well, anyway, Heather Shatko, former council member, is she is a steward for Silver Creek, and I think other people who want to take those kinds of positions should contact her. With that, let's move on to the final proclamation of the evening, and this deals with fair housing, and it's Fair Housing Month. And we do these usually on an annual basis, but sometimes we skip a year, etc. But we thought it was appropriate to do that this year. Whereas the month of April marks the anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin. Whereas fair housing is a fundamental right, ensuring that all individuals have the opportunity to secure housing free from discrimination and enjoy equal access to housing opportunities. Whereas housing providers, real estate professionals, of which we have a few, by the way, policymakers, community leaders, and advocates play a critical role in upholding fair housing laws and promoting housing practices that strengthen our community. And whereas the principles of fair housing support inclusive communities, economic growth, neighborhood stability, benefiting both housing providers and residents. Whereas we recognize that ongoing education, training, and enforcement of fair housing laws are essential to eliminating discrimination and ensuring that housing opportunities remain open to all. Whereas we encourage housing providers, property managers, real estate professionals, and community organizations to actively promote fair housing practices for the benefit of all individuals. Now, therefore, the City of Puyallup hereby proclaim April as Fair Housing Month and reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that fair, equitable housing opportunities are available to all members of our community. And again, Fair Housing Month, I witness whereof the Mayor of Jim Castama have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this first day of April 2025. And I'm not sure whether we have someone from the real estate community to accept this evening. Sometimes we make a proclamation again without having an individual accept it. But I don't see anybody coming forward. With that, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you all for being through this. You now set a record. You can tell people that, you know, you were there when they read 4 proclamations in one meeting. So I want to thank you for all that. We have public comments coming up. We're going to take a small pause. If you would like to go ahead and not go through the public comments, if you'd like to leave, feel free to do so. So we'll go ahead and have that little pause, okay? I'm just going to move back.
Excuse me. Right.
A little bit of
No, for the
At this point, we will have public comments. Everyone will be limited to 3 minutes. And before we have people come forward, however, I would like to have our city clerk go ahead and read the guidelines. Go ahead, please.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, with that, I'd ask that everyone, if you can, please fill out one of these goldenrod forms. It just allows us, if you make a comment that requires us to get back with you, it allows us to get back with you because we have all your information. So with that, the first person I have is Doc Hansen, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Doc Hansen, District 2. I want to thank the council when at the March 11th council meeting you began to address the comments that have been brought to you regarding the 2044 comprehensive plan. I think many of these comments will improve the plan when adopted. That being said, I hope that you remember that the purpose of the document being adopted order to ease your concerns. I'm bringing this because there was an issue regarding liability. Our comprehensive plan is a policy document. Liabilities are subject to the plan's not subject to the plan's language. Our comprehensive plan is a policy document. I won't speak as a lawyer, but with all civil cases related comprehensive plans that I have been involved in, and your attorney may know of some other land use cases, appeals to the comprehensive plans are made only to courts regarding the hearings board decisions and not the jurisdiction who has made the policies through the adopted comprehensive plan. In the summer of 2011, the Eastern Washington State Hearings Board determined that the Kittitas County Comprehensive Plan to be non-compliant with the GMA. Developers appealed the Hearings Board decision to the court, and the Hearings Board decision was upheld on August of 2011. I was brought on staff by Kittitas County as the planning manager and eventual director for the Community Development Department in 2012 to fix their plan. And there was a lot to clean up. We outlined things in the plan that landowners had not yet experienced in the county, and they wanted to stop it. They and we knew that it was not the court's responsibility to determine whether Kittitas County was liable for the language, but it was that hearings board decision to accept the plan that the court would hear. The developers appealed to the hearings board that parts of our plan were not necessary to meet GMA requirements and that the policies being adopted placed undue hardship. The hearings board upheld our adopted plan, and that decision was heard at the court level. The defendant was not Kittitas County and policies adopted. It was against the hearings board for accepting the document.
30 seconds.
The county was not the body liable for the language which they adopted in the plan. And I heard on the March 11th that you were concerned about that. The existing and adopted ordinances are what places jurisdictions in liability. Code ordinance language is what courts review. I only bring this to your attention so you not suffer the stress in the adoption of the plan for legal reasons.
Mr. Mayor, speakers reach 3 minutes.
Which might save you a considerable amount of time and stress in your adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. John Palmer, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Great to see you again tonight. Speaking again on behalf of Main Street. And just want to speak to the Main Street tax credit you'll be considering later on tonight and just say a few words on that. First of all, again, appreciate the wonderful partnership between Main Street and the city. It's great and it's growing stronger. The first thing I want to say is, and I think you kind of know, it's such a good benefit for the Puyallup, this program. Essentially, the state matches the city's donation 3-to-1. So as is proposed, if the city puts in $25,000, the state effectively puts in $75,000. So that's such a good way to leverage dollars and keep tax dollars from going kind of to the rest of the state, instead going to downtown. And I think you guys understand that, but for the public and everyone. So your leverage a $25,000 donation into much more. And so such a great program, and it's great that we have a thriving Main Street to take advantage of it. The other thing is the city's contribution is very important to Main Street. But it's not the only one. Carrie Anasak here has been working very hard to build the base of B&O deductions. I think right around 30 businesses now contribute into the program. And so it's building that strength. But so the city's contribution is very important, but it's not the only thing. And then the last thing is, it basically goes to. It's in the agenda packet. B&O dollars primarily go downtown. It's gone to the pressure washing, graffiti cleanup, holiday lightings, and facades. We have grant programs with the local businesses downtown to improve their signage and that kind of thing. And so your investment is just going to continue to increase that type of investment downtown. And we're still brainstorming some more types of projects to do. But that's really fundamentally where most of that dollars are going to go to. So again, just really appreciate your consideration of that and how important it is to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Let's see, Heather Shatko.
Good evening, Council. Heather Shadko, District 2. I'm wearing my Main Street badge, but I'm here to talk about Library Giving Day. I am also on the Puyallup Library Foundation. Hard time saying no. And the foundation kind of helps bridge the gap between the capital budget for bigger things, the teen zone, things that the library staff want that are outside the budget. Library Giving Day, for the second time in a row, we have partnered with the Tacoma City Library, the Pierce County Libraries, and last year we were the only ones that did it. I'm pretty sure we're doing it again this year. We're the only library systems that have partnered to work together to raise awareness for libraries and what they bring. Libraries are so much more than books. We're putting in our new teen zone. We have a children's area. We have so many computers. Our printers are there. I mean, neither one of my daughters have printers. They do everything on their phone. And so if they need a printer, they can go to a library. So those are all things that, some of us don't think about how necessary our libraries are. And you all do an amazing job funding the library. But the extras, the Friends of the Library fund all the programs, summer reading. The foundation funds those bigger things like the teen zone. The library would really love a sound booth. Our librarian has a podcast she does. There's musicians that would like to do a little recording, and maybe they don't want to do it at home because there's too much noise. They also would like some new murals in the library. They have a wish list of bigger item things. That's what Library Giving would fund. So there's a website out there for library giving. You can go to the foundation page on Facebook, or you can even write a check and drop it off at the library. But Library Giving Day is today, but we do Library Giving Month. So all month, would love to have you all support us. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone who has not provided one of these forms that would like to say a few words? Okay. With that, we're now going to move on to the next item, number 3. And again, we're now going into the kind of the meat and potatoes of the agenda, the consent agenda, et cetera, and passing a number of resolutions, ordinances, et cetera. If anyone would like to leave, feel free to do so. if your portion is complete. Again, it's rather fluid of those people who attend. With that, we're going to move on to number 3, the consent agenda. This is where we have a number of items, and with one vote, we go ahead and pass those. And again, they're non-contentious, previously agreed to items. With that, is there any item that is on the consent agenda this evening that a member would like to have removed? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to number 4, ordinance. This is the second reading. We had first reading where it passed, but we give time, 2 weeks or a week, whatever, an interim period for people to think about, whether they're going to amend it, et cetera. Now we have second reading. We have a number of those this evening. This is a second reading regarding an ordinance for a latecomers agreement with the Russell and Lori Freiberg case. And we heard this last time. We have City Engineer Hans Hunger. If you have any questions, and if not, I would entertain a motion to accept it on second reading.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Hans, you did a great job. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to 4B, second reading of an ordinance updating the automated traffic safety camera code. Oh, pardon me. City Clerk, do we need a roll call on that for second reading?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Gillum.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr.
Aye.
Councilmember Adler.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King.
Aye.
Mayor Casimo.
Aye. Okay, now we'll move on to 4B, second reading of an ordinance updating the automated traffic camera code to comply with changes in Washington state law. We have our city attorney, Joe Beck, who will answer any questions if any members have any. And if not, I'd entertain a motion to accept on second reading again.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, we will have roll call. City Clerk.
Councilmember Whitting.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr.
Aye.
Councilmember Adler.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King.
Aye.
Councilmember Gillum.
Aye.
Mayor Casimo.
Aye. Okay, 4C is the second reading of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for the design and construction of the tenant improvements for the police station and emergency operations centers in the Benaroya facility. Finance Director Barbara Lopez is here for any questions, but if there are none, I would entertain a motion to pass that on second reading.
Make the motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. We will have roll call. Thank you,
Councilmember Dorr.
Barbara. Clerk, please.
Councilmember Dorr.
Aye.
Councilmember Adler.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting.
Aye.
Councilmember Gillum.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King.
Aye.
Mayor Casimo.
Aye. Okay, now we're moving on to number 5, consideration of requests. This is you heard some of this in the public testimony, but this is regarding the donation to the Puyallup Main Street Association as part of the state Main Street Tax Credit Program. City Manager Steve Kirkley, if you want to give a brief description of that for all members, that would be excellent.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor.
Steve, 1 second. Councilmember Johnson, can your question wait till he gives a description? Or
yes, I can wait.
Okay.
Same.
Same? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Steve Kirkley, City Manager. We're here to introduce this item on the B&O tax credit. As former Councilmember Palmer mentioned, this is a request by PMSA for a $100,000 donation. As mentioned earlier, it's the business and occupation tax is something that the city pays, just like other businesses, on our operations. So on our utilities, other business operations, we have to pay to the state the B&O tax. There's a provision in state law that allows cities to donate portion of our funds to a Main Street association, and then a portion of that can be credited against our B&O tax. So in this case, Main Street has requested a $100,000 donation, which we've done the previous 2 years. Of that $100,000, if the council approved it, we would receive a $75,000 credit. So in essence, the net cost to the city or the donation would be $25,000. This would be the third year in a row if council approves for the $100,000. Carrie Yanisak, the executive director, and it looks like several of the board members are here from PMSA. So that's the extent of my presentation, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. First, Councilmember Johnson, I think this is 3 years ago. If you backtrack, I believe you were the father, the parent, or whatever kind of attribute you want to give to this particular tax credit, but please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak to this. So you're correct. I remember Executive Director Yanisak and I, we would chat periodically. At the time, you were trying to fill up your B&O tax from various businesses, and I said that I would help them with that and began to reach out to several businesses and get them to support it. And then I made a commitment to them. I didn't really know how I was going to do it. I said, how much left do you have to max out your maximum B&O? And he told me the amount. And I said, I commit to helping you find that. And I was going to just basically go to business to find it. And then through a series of just kind of, stumbling upon, I thought, wait a minute, can the city be that entity that can donate the B&O tax? And dug a little further and realized that we could. And so submitted that proposal to my colleagues in the council, and consequently they supported it. When we did it, I think for the first time last year, there was some element, yeah, we're happy to do this, but what can the Main Street provide for us as kind of our return on the $25,000 investment portion of it? And so I think we made a suggestion for a music festival or something, which you kind of move through. This year, I'd like to suggest that we move it through again, but rather than us trying to figure out what they should do for it, but empower the board and the directors to figure out how they might take that $25,000 and bring it back to the city on some things that they might see as kind of feet on the ground. And so I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and allot this $100,000 B&O tax option with a contingency that they come back to us and say, hey, we're going to take your portion of the money and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and trust them to figure out what to do best with that money rather than for us to dictate it. So that's my motion on the table, and I trust that we'll get some support and pass this unanimously.
Okay. With that, there is a motion that's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So it's now on the floor for discussion. Councilmember Gilliam.
Yeah, I put my name up on the board mainly to say how proud I am of all the great work that Puyallup Main Street Association has done for our community. Being the city council representative on the board, I've been overwhelmed with how great they are at supporting the graffiti cleanup, the art that we've been able to paint on the sides of our buildings. I was going to go through and write a whole list, but I really don't want to take up the whole night of singing praises. But I'll try to do a few, just hopefully it does justice. So we got the graffiti cleanup. We do have SIP downtown. We have Meeker Days. We have our farmers market. We have things that we implement. I say we because I'm part of the team. But really, it's all the great things that we do to boost business in downtown Puyallup. I've been blown away learning about the great work that you guys do and how committed every board member is at empowering our local businesses to grow and to thrive. So on behalf of, I guess, myself and maybe because I'm on the council, thank you. Thank you very much. Full support here. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move this to a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? And by the way, does this require a roll call or not? Okay, excellent. So just want to make sure I'm crossing, all my T's, dotting my I's. Okay, now we're going to move on to other business. We have 2 items in other business. 6A is an overview of periodic update code amendments. Keep in mind that we are working on the comprehensive plan, and then afterwards come the code amendments. So we are just getting kind of a preview now of what will come before us, probably in about 2 months, thereabouts. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Mayor Customa, members of council. Katie Baker, Planning Manager. As Mayor Kestema introduced, this is an overview of code amendments that we will be bringing before you later this year. These are really follow-on items to our periodic update of the comprehensive plan. We're getting very close to comprehensive plan adoption, I believe, and moving into code amendments is the next phase of that work. I do have, it's a longer presentation than I would like. There's about one slide on every code topic. I welcome, if the mayor is all right with this, I welcome your comments and any questions throughout the presentation, so you don't have to just listen to me for the next little while. So you may remember, I'm calling this phase 2 of code amendments because last year the council adopted what we called phase 1 of the package of amendments. Those were a number of items that were kind of mostly minor but impactful cleanup items to the code. The items that will come before you throughout this year are primarily related to legislative changes, most of which have been adopted since 2021. With these various requirements, we have some timelines for adoption. So they're either required to be adopted concurrent with the comprehensive plan as part of completion of our periodic update. Some are required within 6 months of the comprehensive plan due date, which remember was December of last year. So those amendments are required to be adopted by June 30th, and then others that are required by December 31st. We are not unique in that we are a little bit delayed with some of these. Many other cities are in that same boat. Our goal is to have these code amendments adopted by the end of this year. Your last council meeting is December 9th, so that is our target date. So as I've mentioned, the purpose of these updates primarily is compliance with legislative changes. Many of these, I would say the vast majority of these amendments have to do with housing and essentially establishing requirements for cities that will expand housing options for our community and remove barriers to housing development. These amendments also serve to implement our comprehensive plan vision and improve consistency among our regulations. So the first, which you've heard quite a bit about in previous presentations, we call the Middle Housing Bill. This is House Bill 1110. This is legislation that requires cities to allow for middle housing in all zones that also allow single-family residential uses. There are a number of middle housing types that are listed. I like to say it ranges from duplexes and triplexes up to cottage-style housing and townhomes. Our city is required to allow 2 units per development lot, and there are a few other parameters as well in proximity to major transit. There are some exemptions. One in particular that's allowed in this legislation is to exempt lots within critical areas. That could include wetlands, streams, geologically hazardous areas. This regulation does have a June 30th adoption date. Because of where we're at with the comprehensive plan, guidance from the council, as well as work with the Planning Commission, we are moving forward to propose adopting an interim zoning ordinance that will take effect by that June 30th date. And then continuing to work under your direction with the Planning Commission to develop permanent code regulations. The next piece of legislation is House Bill 1337. This has to do with accessory dwelling units and requiring that, again, zones that allow single-family housing, we have to allow up to 2 ADUs per lot. So currently our zoning standards allow for 1 accessory dwelling unit or ADU, and there are size limitations that are either 700 square feet or 900 square feet, depending on if it's a pre-existing building. This legislation requires that we allow up to 1,000 square feet. We will also be removing our owner occupancy requirements that we currently have in code, and there are modifications to our parking requirements. This is something the Planning Commission is working on currently. They'll be holding a public hearing in the next month or so, month and a half, and you will see this these proposed code amendments, I believe, in June. I'll pause here if there are any questions.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to cue in on the second bullet point for modifying certain standards. There was a mention of removing the no owner occupied requirements. Is that triggered by state requirements? So that initial concept that we did organically prior to this was appropriate in our own kind of authority and jurisdiction, but you're saying that the state now has superseded that requirement and therefore it kind of washes that out and there's no standing for us to maintain that.
Yes, that is correct, Councilmember Johnson. If we were to maintain that requirement, that would set us up for potential challenge if we enforced that.
Yeah, it sounds like that could be the case. I'd sure love to have some people explore this. I suspect that what you're sharing is absolutely accurate, but I would sure love to get another view on that. So I'll be taking a look at that in on my own time to see if there may be some other clauses that might allow us some flexibility there. Thank you.
Keep in mind, we're looking at, we're going to make sure there's ample time for you to do that.
Thank you.
Proceed, please.
Thank you. The next topic area is related to emergency housing. This is now being referred to by the Department of Commerce as STEP housing. This encompasses 4 different housing types. Emergency shelters, which is the S, transitional housing is the T, emergency housing is the E, and permanent supportive housing is the P in STEP housing. You may recall that the council amended the code to address these requirements back in 2023. So we are mostly in compliance with this legislation. However, since that time, per state requirements, we have established an allocated number of beds for emergency housing that we need to demonstrate we have the capacity to accommodate. So, of course, the city is not necessarily responsible for constructing facilities with those beds, but we have to demonstrate that capacity. Because our current code regulations have buffers from sensitive uses, requirements of proximity to transit stops, spacing requirements between facilities, and occupancy limits for those facilities, we cannot achieve more than 150 beds with all of those requirements in place, and we need to demonstrate a capacity of 458 beds. So we will be looking at those various siting standards and providing the council and the Planning Commission with options for how to modify the code, retain, some of those standards to the extent feasible, but still demonstrate that we can meet that bed number of 458. The next has to do with design standards. So there is a state requirement that we establish clear and objective design standards. The city has, I would say, basically three different design regulations in our code. So we have one chapter that kind of covers most of our multifamily residential, commercial, and industrial uses. We have another chapter that is specific to our mixed-use zones, and is a design review overlay with some kind of higher standards. And then we have a third set, which is our downtown design guidelines. So that's a standalone document that's adopted by code, and that is specific to downtown. There are some exceptions for landmarks or historic districts, but with each of these code regulations, we need to review them for assurance that they are clear and objective. I think preliminarily, we think with our code chapters 2026 and 2052, those are fairly objective, but they do need to be modernized. And our downtown design guidelines, we do want to do some more work to make those more objective. We also intend to look at our design review board review and decision-making process, and there is kind of a shift to encourage more administrative review and less kind of saving the review by our city's board for maybe those larger more complex projects or something that is more innovative and kind of steps outside of those clear and objective standards. The next requirement is that cities establish a unit lot subdivision process within our short plat regulations. So short plats are subdivision mechanisms that create four or less building lots, building parcels. A unit lot subdivision is a way to establish not development parcels, but lots for sale. So I'm going to try and figure out some better ways that I can explain this. I've gone through this with the Planning Commission already. It's a little bit hard to wrap our heads around, I think. This example that I have on the screen is probably the best way of thinking about it. So you would have a parent parcel that allows the development, in this example, of 4 townhome units. Those units are constructed, and then each unit is put on its unit lot. So you kind of have parcel lines that are drawn around the unit itself. That allows for sale of that unit, where otherwise, if all 4 units were on one parcel, they could not be sold. They could only be rented. So this is a way, it can be used for townhomes, as you see on the slide. It could also be used for a single family home and an ADU, where you could put the home on one unit lot, the ADU on a second unit lot, and have different ownership there. So this is a process that the city has talked a bit about. We've talked with council about and heard from you the importance of increasing options for home ownership. This is one very key way to do that. And then alongside that, the state has actually passed legislation that requires cities to adopt this. So we will be, we're currently working on this with our Planning Commission. Next, we have a piece of legislation that requires co-living in all multifamily residential zones. So I kind of like to describe co-living, think of like a dormitory style housing situation, or kind of like a hotel, but where you would actually long-term rent a unit, a fairly small unit. It may have a sleeping area, maybe a small kitchenette, a private bathroom, and that's probably about it. And then there would be common amenities and common facilities of like a larger kitchen area and perhaps a living space that would be shared among the residents. So this is something that we used to see historically, you know, over 100 years ago in our cities, but has been kind of zoned out for quite a long time. And this is something that the state is now requiring cities allow, again, in multifamily residential zones. That would also include our mixed-use zones.
Katie, excuse me.
Yeah.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about co-living, but just you don't need to turn back on the slide. But I do want to talk about the last one, that lot line kind of parcel adjustment of using the example of 4 different ones that the units could be sold separately, even though it was built on one lot. So I kind of like the concept of that. I'm just wondering, and you don't need to answer if you don't know, or maybe you do know, could there be any provision by the state to retroactive existing complexes to be divided up so they could sell individually? So just using, you know, this is kind of an example. Let's say the unit that's down by the Spark Stadium that was built, that was kind of a townhome setup. And if I understand correctly, it's probably set up as just one unit. But let's just say that owner, any owner said, hey, we want to subdivide this with some lot line adjustments. Could that be applied retroactively to that so that each of them could be sold separately if a homeowner wanted to do that or a landowner wanted to do that?
Yes, absolutely, Councilmember Johnson. And in fact, we see that being probably a common use of that subdivision process once it's established. That existing multi-unit buildings could then be subdivided through this unit lot process and sold individually.
That's intriguing. Is there, so following that in line, that thought in line, would that work for a larger complex of more than 4? Similar to like an apartment to a condo concept idea. I'm just thinking out loud if there was some provision for that.
Absolutely. So that brings up something I didn't go into detail with, but we're required by the state to adopt this in our short plat regulations, but we can also establish it for more than 4 units. So we absolutely could, and have been talking with the Planning Commission about this, establishing a process so that, perhaps a 20-unit townhome development could use this unit lot subdivision process, and then each of those 20 units could be individually owner-occupied.
And just thinking out loud on that concept, I mean, I would need to think that through. I'm sure council would want to weigh in, supportive or against, but just kind of entertaining kind of a study session asking here. Let's just hypothetically say council, wasn't supportive initially, wanted to try the bare minimum or whatever it was, a 4. But let's just say it's something that's workable, or let's just say that it's something. Could we adopt something on a case-by-case situation where if a landowner came to us and say, listen, we got this apartment complex, we'd like to turn this into affordable homeownership. It's got X amount of units. Could we, at that point, apply for this provision to, what do we call it, no lot line adjustment to this unit, or would it need to be kind of a blanket across the whole city concept, or could that be case-by-case provision or request as in kind of a unique situation without across the city implementation?
So I'm not quite sure I know the answer to that, but your question does raise something that I want to address and make sure that the council understands, which is that this unit lot subdivision process can only be used for things that have a vertical shared wall. So it cannot be used for stacked units like an apartment, a multi-story apartment building. So things like duplexes, triplexes, townhomes with shared walls, it can be used for, but because it creates actual unit lots based on land, it does not work for shared units. Condominiumization is the only option for those stacked units.
Okay, so that takes care of the over-under kind of concept of separate units. So it would have to be basically, single level, so to speak. Yeah, because I was thinking there could be a clause if we're able to do that through that process. You could theoretically build them as apartments and then apply for this deal and then perhaps eliminate this whole condo reform law. It's a backwards way of doing it, but since we can't do it, that takes that. But it's interesting to know there could be some retroactive on that. So thanks for answering that. Yeah. The co-living, can you just expound a little bit more? Because I've never heard of this. I'm not honestly very intrigued by it, but I kind of want to know more about it. So tell me, what would that look like in real life in a scenario here?
So I've tried to do a little bit of digging to see if we have any co-living examples in the city. I think it's possible that the Holly Hotel might meet this definition, although that's of course a much older, building and style, and I'm just not quite familiar with how that occupancy works. But essentially, it would be a building, let's say maybe 3 stories, and each floor would have very small, maybe you might call them micro units. Your unit would be a lockable unit, but think of it as kind of the size of a hotel room. It would have, a bed, a bathroom, maybe a small seating area, and perhaps a small kitchenette, as you can see in the picture at the top of the slide. There would be multiple rooms of that size in the structure, and then they would have shared kitchen facilities and shared, probably a shared living room that's a larger space, perhaps shared outdoor amenities. So it's really quite similar to an apartment building, but the units are just much, much smaller. And so what this does is it establishes just a more affordable option for a lot of, single individuals who otherwise may have to, find a house with roommates, or, young adults who may still be living with their parents. So this kind of provides that opportunity to get a place of their own, to, get into the rental market, if they can't afford kind of a full, 2-bedroom apartment type of thing.
Boy, is this something that the state is requiring as well?
It is.
Wow. I have to, it's going to be straightforward. I'm really concerned with this concept. The other ones are, personally speaking, difficult for me to kind of, swallow. This one really is crossing the line for me of what the potential could be of a potential variety of tenants living in that kind of closed quarters with such small investment. I don't know. Boy, Mayor, I don't know about that one. You and I may need to really hit that one hard because I'm struggling with that one. I'm just going to be straight shooting. So anyway, this is the first I've heard of that. I've heard that the row housing and stuff, and I've heard of doubling up your single family zones. This is adding a whole new dormitory style of mandate that's never really been implemented before, and so it drastically changes a neighborhood. You put this in a neighborhood. Is this theoretically can go in any single-family neighborhood?
No single family. This is required in only in multifamily residential zones. So it would be our 3 multifamily zones. Probably will end up with 3 commercial zones that allow for housing, and 3 to 5 mixed-use zones.
Okay. Well, Mayor, I'm just going to let you know straight up here. I don't like this one, and I'm concerned with it. It's not that I don't like the concept. I just don't like what as you would state, and I learned this from you, Mr. Mayor, and I really stuck with it. This has some really good, warm and fuzzy feeling intent, but as you stated, and I've learned so well, it potentially, and I might say likely, will have unintended consequences and perhaps negative effects. So because of that, I'm a little bit less warm and fuzzy wanting to embrace this lock, stock, and barrel without some careful study and some analysis on this part of it especially. So thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you've kind of gleaned that from my observation. So often people who make these policy decisions don't live with the consequences. That's also kind of my take on it. But let's go with Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, I know that this says multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
Would this also be considered middle housing?
This is not considered middle housing, no.
Just for clarification for those that are watching. Also, could you potentially walk us through what long-term community impacts this would have, both positive and negative, and what we could see with in regards to utility capacity?
Mm-hmm.
Does our utility systems that we have, water, sewer, all of the above, can we handle this?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I'll give kind of a short answer right now, and if the council desires, I have much more information, more than one slide on this topic. It sounds like there's a lot of questions. I'd be happy to come back and give a more detailed presentation just on this topic. I'll say very briefly that the legislation, and because of the size-limited nature of these rooms, the legislation assumes that one room is the equivalent of a quarter of a dwelling unit. So that's for both density purposes, and then when you think about the impacts to our utilities, if there's only one person in each room, there could easily be 4 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment unit. And so that equivalent, in theory, it should not tax our utility system any more than an apartment complex full of 2-bedroom units.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, that's assuming only one person in the room. I question that assumption. Anyway, Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I just wanted to, Katie, I have seen this type of housing at a National League of Cities mobile tour. That's what they call them. But where I've seen it utilized is in like with the veterans. They will use this housing with those common spaces, and it helps the veterans. They have their independence, but yet they also have the ability. It draws them out and has the interaction. So I can appreciate the way that it has been applied in some of the other areas, and I think that we have some veterans. We honored our military, so I think that we need to think about the potential uses of this and keep that in mind. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I just want just food for thought as we continue to, I want to think out loud and get it public. But I've been in some of these areas in Seattle where they have this, and this is really not a very nice walkable area. It's definitely not a place that you would typically see in kind of an average neighborhood. And then I also remember a similar issue, and it's maybe a little bit removed, so don't hold it apples for apples, but the concept was the same. I remember in District 3 many years ago, there were some landlords who were renting out a bunch of rooms in this house, and they had more people in there that the rooms would allow, and it created some undue kind of, impact in the neighborhood with parking and all kinds of activities. Now, I understand that this will be in a different zone area, but it doesn't negate the fact that when you have that many people living in kind of small and few rooms, you really, it spells a potential for, again, negative impacts in the surrounding area. So I really think that we need to take a look at this and study it, and also recognize, it appears that we have a required mandate. I'm not convinced that we have to take the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel. We need to look at that. But I just, and again, into the veterans thing, I certainly appreciate that. But that's just one example. The odds of these, let's say, being fully implemented in our city, the question that I would ask is that although I support veterans and housing and support they need, I would suspect that the overwhelming majority, if in fact these are built, will not be built for veterans. Will be built for, money to get as many people into those units as possible and maximize the developer's return for their investment. So I just am kind of concerned, and again, I hope that we can all take a look at this and see if there's any way that we can advocate on behalf of our city to make sure that we're eliminating as much potential negative impact based off of good intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
So this next piece of legislation is also housing related. This has to do with requiring allowances for conversion of commercial or mixed use buildings to multifamily. So this could be a portion of a building, all of a building, but essentially it's within the confines of the existing building itself. This would require us to allow conversion of that commercial space to residential space. Again, this is in multifamily or commercial or mixed use zones, I should say. And then, like so many of these other pieces of legislation, there are requirements or certain allowances pertaining to density, parking, how much parking we can require. But it essentially allows us or requires us to allow this conversion within the existing footprint of the building. So this would not be in addition to, certainly if our code allows and the building owner wanted to do that, they could do an addition, but this legislation is specifically related to the existing building footprint.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to touch on that. Thanks for some of this helps me talk this through in my own mind. I kind of like the concept of this a little bit because it kind of reminds me of the old school. When you look at our downtown history, so many of the residences were up, people, mom and pop, small business, they worked downstairs, they lived upstairs, and we still see many, apartment units above our commercial deal. So I kind of like the idea of having the options to allow housing in that area. It kind of creates for security because you keep an eye on the business because people are living upstairs. And it could provide some inexpensive living for the person that is running a business there, or if the business wanted to offset some income, they could certainly use that for housing. So I kind of like this idea. So my initial support is favorable on this, I guess, from what I can tell at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I would only caution on all of these where they have no parking requirements. You have to understand that the state legislature is passing a bill that will only require on any of the structures that are down approximately one parking spot for every 2 units, which is really substantially less than what we require. And that sounds all good, other than the fact that we all know people, very few carless people are out there. Most people have 1, if not 2 cars per couple. And what that can lead to in a downtown core is in absolutely no retail parking places. And the response that larger cities have is we'll find just a meter your parking. And so now all of a sudden you meter your parking, which severely limits the commercial potential of your downtown areas, especially like a city like Puyallup, its potential size. It's very important that we find that balance between parking requirements, so we have enough ample parking for people when they come down and they go to all of our retail locations. It's a very delicate balance, and I can tell you I've talked to businesses in the community that would hard stop. They would stop development if it would adhere to the parking requirements that the state legislature would like, which are sometimes virtually no parking requirements, as in this case, no parking requirements. The business people themselves would be the ones to say, no, we don't want that development at all. So the irony, I guess what I'm trying to point out, is that although they often want residential development in the downtown cores, the very policies they create make it so that everybody will fight against them. They do not understand the delicate balance. Again, it's the state usurping local control when they really, frankly, don't know what they're doing, in my opinion. But that's, anyway, Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castava. I think it'd be fabulous if we can find a way to get some apartments up in the mall. Plenty of parking, access to the freeway, open spaces, walk to Target for your groceries. But maybe we can talk them all into developing some of their space for apartments. Thank you.
Excellent idea. Actually, they would, I think we are talking to them. We've rezoned it, and we'll try to accommodate that where we can. But you're absolutely correct. That makes, plus that's one of our commercial centers. Puyallup is very unique. We have 2 commercial centers downtown, and then because of a lot of even natural hazards, the lahar, et cetera, years ago, policymakers said we're going to have our commercial center up on the hill. And Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. I just want to respond to Councilmember Gilliam's idea regarding the South Hill Mall. Mayor, you are right. We have talked with the Cafaro family. In fact, I just took a tour of Anthony Cafaro. I had reached out to the mayor, but he couldn't make it, so he asked me to go in his stead, and took a tour of the brand new hotel they're building up there. It's a fantastic extended stay hotel there. And they very much are very interested in looking at the repurposing of that property, knowing that kind of traditional malls as a trend across the country are kind of, evolving and so they're looking to repurpose that property. And so I think the hotel is a great indication that they're looking to put some economic development and more folks kind of in there. And there have been some serious conversations in times past to put some apartment units there. And so it's a great idea, and I think that there is some conversations happening towards that endeavor. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So parking obviously has come up with a number of these requirements because along with or as part of encouraging more housing options, one of the legislative responses has been to eliminate parking requirements in certain areas. So this has to do with limiting parking requirements within proximity to high quality transit. This is within a quarter mile. So the map you see on the screen, the kind of transparent bluish circle is the quarter mile radius from the sounder station. The line within that is the quarter mile walk shed. So if you were to walk from the station because of having to follow certain streets, that walk shed is different and is slightly smaller than that just radius from the station itself. So we'll be doing some work with both the quarter mile radius and the half mile radius to propose something that makes sense following, block divisions and that sort of thing. But with this in particular, this limits how much parking we can require for affordable units. So those are very low and extremely low income units. Those are units below 50% area median income. And it also limits parking for units for seniors and people with disabilities. It also has limitations for market rate units, but my review of the legislation is that won't apply because our transit doesn't meet the minimum frequency. But I do want to say this has come up a couple of times tonight in terms of, what are our legal obligations with all of this legislation? I've already been coming up with a number of questions that I have for our city attorney, and certainly this has brought up a few more tonight. So we'll be going through this legislation, hopefully, to ensure that we understand what does and does not apply to the city. So just wanted to put that note there.
I have a question from Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Katie, can you confirm or deny that the pieces of legislation that you're walking us through currently, are they all already signed into law, or are these bills that are making its way through the legislature, which is set to sine die on April 27th?
That's a great question, Councilmember Adler. These are all, this is all legislation that is already signed into law, so it's everything through last year's legislative session. Certainly there are things under consideration this year that could change some of these. It could change other requirements that I may not even be speaking about tonight. And we are, of course, tracking that, and we'll be responding once the legislative session concludes.
Thank you.
One more aspect related to parking. This has to do with modifications to residential parking requirements. It's specifically addressing things like that cities cannot require garages and carports to meet residential parking requirements, meaning we have to allow parking to be allowed just on an open driveway, not specifically within a garage. We don't require that already, so we don't need to change anything there. It does require that we allow for tandem parking spaces if that's proposed. Our code currently doesn't speak to tandem spaces. We've had some applicants in the past ask about that, and we have allowed it, I believe, in a few situations. So this is we're mostly in compliance with this, or our code is silent. And so we want to make sure that the code is clear so that our staff can clearly enforce things or proceed with requirements that are in compliance with the legislation.
Councilmember Wedding.
I just wanted to confirm that my understanding of what a tandem parking place is. It's too deep. Cars parking too deep on a driveway, for instance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So that could be a garage space with a driveway behind it that would count as your 2 parking spaces, or yeah, it could be too deep is exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this next piece of legislation has to do with impact fees. So as I'm sure you all are aware, we have impact fees in the city for transportation, parks, and schools. We are already proceeding with an update to our transportation impact fee rate study. That's something that we've started working on as we've wrapped up our work on the comprehensive plan update. That rate study has not been updated since 2007, so it is very much in need of a refresh. As we go through that, we will be ensuring that any code amendments are brought forward so that we're in compliance with this legislation, which is that our impact fees are proportionately lower for smaller housing units. So we already do this to some extent with park impact fees. So I think we're in compliance there. We would just be making sure that our transportation and our school impact fees are also proportionate based on the size of a housing unit. There are a few different options for how we can implement that and calculate that. And so we'll be looking more into that process. This next one, I think you've heard a little bit about. This is Senate Bill 5290. This has to do with our application review procedures and timelines. So this legislation has made some modifications to our timelines for processing permits, land use permits, building permits. There's now kind of a tiered approach, whether the project has no public notice or hearing, so it's strictly an administrative process. whether it does have a public notice but not a hearing, or if it has both public notice and public hearing, then there's a longer timeline for that. So that's something that we've been working on kind of in the background. We did bring council a resolution that you adopted earlier this year where you adopted three particular measures that allows us to waive the fee repayment. We have begun implementing those measures. So those three are that pre-application meetings are optional only, not required. That we have on-call review staff for planning, engineering, and building to help in times of high permit volumes or staff shortages. And we're also in the process of establishing a process where we meet with applicants after a second review or correction letter is sent out. We'll offer a meeting with that applicant to go over any of the major issues identified in that correction letter, with the goal of that third submittal then being kind of the final submittal and getting to a place ideally of approval of that permit. So implementation of those measures should help us to shift to meeting these timelines, and we have, of course, other process improvements that we're looking at that will help with that as well. This legislation requires annual performance reports, and our first report was due on March 1st of this year. That report has been submitted, so we're in compliance with that, and we're continuing to kind of refine the tools within our permit system so that we can produce those reports each year and be tracking how we're doing with these timelines and continually making improvements. This is the final amendment to talk about. This is probably the biggest one, and this is not a state-required amendment in terms of any legislation. This is updating our zoning map and our zone chapters to be in compliance with the hopefully soon-to-be adopted comp plan and future land use map. So as we've talked about, we've brought forward a number of land use designation changes on the land use map as part of this comp plan update. When that is adopted, we will then need to make those consistency changes on our zoning map. I think we've talked a bit about this, but that we'll look at consolidating some of our single-family zones, removing a couple lesser-used zones. That's our office professional and our limited commercial zone. Making some modifications to our limited mixed-use zone to implement that neighborhood commercial designation we've talked about. Modifying the business park zone where the Benaroya property is located, as well as modifications to the fair zone. So all of these to different degrees are in response to policy changes or map changes that will be made as part of the comp plan update. There are many other code amendments, other zoning changes that we want to work on. But this first set that I've just presented on for the last 45 minutes will keep us very busy this year. We certainly have other code updates that we've talked with you all about. We want to continue working on to help our development community, to help our residents know what is expected in their neighborhoods, to have more concise and streamlined regulations for our staff to implement. And with this, we'll make a good first step at that progress. As I mentioned, we're working with our Planning Commission already on some of these. We anticipate bringing, I said the first group of amendments, it may only be the accessory dwelling unit amendment that'll come before you in June for that June 30th adoption. And then other amendments will be bringing forth over the rest of the year. I really appreciate your feedback tonight. I'm willing to take any other questions or comments, but this has been very helpful and helps me to know where you need more information. And certainly I'll be working with the city manager to make sure we can bring that back to you.
Great. If you could just give us a concise list of those particular pieces of legislation, I look forward to using them when I need to go to sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And I will read them, by the way. Okay, with that, is there no further questions? If there are not, Katie, thank you. Let's now go ahead and move on to the next item, which is one of the probably biggest attributes here in Puyallup is our parks. We have, and I believe the number is 18, you have to correct me on that because I say 18 I don't know technically with 17 or 18 parks, but they are the darling of Puyallup. And we have a strategic plan update. As Talika is our chief strategic planner here, or analyst in the city of Puyallup, I think a fantastic position for a city to have, because it lets people know that we're very purposeful and we have intent in our actions. They really follow goals that we have prescribed from the council chamber that are disseminated down through all of our different departments. So with that, please, Talika, proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Casterma. Good evening, Mayor Casterma, council members. Talika Makharia, Performance Management Analyst. And I feel like the mayor pretty much did my part of the presentation. So before the Parks Director comes and presents his team's latest and greatest strategic plan, he kindly allowed me 1 minute to talk about the significance of department strategic plans for our city. I'm not aware of another city our size that does this kind of work. And we do it for 2 reasons. One is doing strategic planning at the department level allows for better connection and alignment. So at the very top of our performance management system, you see we have community priorities and council vision. We don't want those to just sit there. We want them to be activated and implemented. And department strategic plans really help with cascading that vision down to our staff members who do that work on a day-to-day basis. So again, alignment and connection. The other reason we do department strategic plans that in our city, we use the balanced scorecard concept. We base our department strategic plans on that concept, modified slightly to each department's unique customers and operations. And what that allows is for us to look at every aspect of the organization, of the department, and ask what is important to measure? What is it that we should track? And we use, during the process, we establish KPIs, key performance indicators, and we track that data. We are working on refining that part of our management system, but we use those KPIs to track what is important, and it feeds into other aspects, elements of our management system. So this year, this is the first department strategic plan we've brought to you, and hopefully we'll bring more. So that being said, I will pass this to Cody Geddes, Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you, Talika. I appreciate you giving that overview. And I would say that at one time I interacted with 300 different municipalities. I did that in a prior position where I dealt with local government, chaired a committee as such in the Senate. And rarely would I see a city, in fact I could count on one hand, how many cities go through the very methodical process that we do. I think it really has given tangible benefits. I believe it started under Councilmember Dorr, then went on to Councilmember Johnson, and I certainly am going to continue wholeheartedly, as I think we are in the future. This is now our culture, is that we really want to be extremely purposeful with the tax dollars that are given us so that we make full use of those, and that we test that constantly with our public to make sure that we are keeping what they deem as priorities, keeping those satisfied. And anyway, thank you. With that, proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Casterma, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Cody Geddes. I'm the Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Director. And just want to say thank you to Talika for leading us through this process. It's my first time through the process. We started meeting in October, and a series of meetings, 10 or 12 different employees throughout the department giving input on this. And so really a great process to be involved in. If you look close, that might look like Councilmember Johnson in that picture.
I was going to say with glasses, but
but it's not.
Councilmember Johnson, do you have a question or can you wait?
I'd like to just go ahead and insert right before he gets too deep. I just want to thank Talika for the overview, and I love her comment that from her vantage point that at least in this region, we're probably the only city of this size that implements a strategic plan and rolls it out. We see a lot of bigger cities that do that, but we do that here, and I think it's a real testament. But I also want to go back to, I remember many, many years ago, it's probably, I guess it would have been about, has it been, I don't know, 8 years? How many years have you been on the council now, Mayor?
8 years.
8 years. So I remember 8 years ago when Mayor, then Councilmember Castema, was sitting where Councilmember Gilliam is. And he was right there. And I was sitting right here. And I was getting this kind of flashback here. You know, Councilmember, now Mayor Castema, you know, brought up a couple of very specific things he wanted to bring to the table. And one of them was the strategic plan and how important that was. And he kept saying, he used to refer to, you know, how Bellevue operates and Redmond and all these cities that really strive for excellence. And it was his leadership and his kind of, you know, teeing it up and determination that I really believe that we're reaping the benefit of that now. So I want to thank you for bringing that to the city. And then I also want to thank Mayor Dorr. She was the one, I believe, that, you know, after you kind of teed it up, she was, I think, in office and helped kind of lead that up and get it implemented. So it's a real testament to the council's vision and to the staff's, you know, kind of taking that vision and running with it, and then Talika kind of leading that up with the strategic development and strategic planning. Is that we're here today. So it's just a really wonderful testament. We have a very special city. We're not perfect, but we're pretty special, and it's getting more special with time, and this is all part of it. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so just a quick overview of the Parks and Recreation Department. We're broken down into really 3 sections, which is recreation, and want to introduce a couple people here tonight. So we have our activities center supervisor, Doug McCormick, here in the audience as well. And so he's been part of that team for over 20 years now, leading the activity center. And Dion, oh, he went to the bathroom. How timely was that? Yeah, we'll come back to him. And then Bill McRae, our Parks and Facilities Supervisor. And so Bill oversees our Parks Department, our facilities, custodial, and the Woodbine Cemetery. Our mission and vision here is to live long, live healthy through people, parks, and programs. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. There he is, Dion, timely. Our recreation manager, in charge of all of our programming throughout the city.
Is he going to give the speech you said he was going?
You just call him up here. Yeah, he said he'd love to talk tonight.
Just want to see him sweat.
Dion's coming up on 30 years here with the city, so he's been so he's been leading this department for a long time.
Well, I love your vision there. Was when live long, and of course I think live long and prosper, but live long, live healthy through people, parks, and programs. That's a great vision.
Right.
Anyway, Councilmember Johnson, go ahead. Okay, proceed.
All right, so Talika led us through a SWOT analysis, and so we talked about our strengths, our weaknesses, and opportunities, and I'll just talk about a few of those. Our large park system, you know, beautiful trails, ball fields, lakes, trails, all of the offerings that we have here in Puyallup. The vast range of programming, our athletic programming is just top-notch. Events, you know, the programming in the summer in Pioneer Park is just phenomenal, and we are well regarded in the community. The community survey, Parks and Recreation Department had an 84% approval rating, and so that's something we've been talking about a lot, and I keep telling Talika we're going to get to 95% at some point, so high, lofty goals. And some of the weaknesses, the department's constrained lack of staffing. You know, we have a high standard, so we're hoping to get to that. A lack of well-developed strategy to promote the parks, so we'll talk some more about marketing. And Some opportunities that we have: increased visibility of our programs. I just think we don't always take the opportunity to brag about just how great we are. So expanding partnerships with the school district, Main Street, and other local business opportunities. Enhancing communication within our own department. Those 5 divisions, we don't always talk together, so we're trying to get better at communicating within. And then some threats. Vandalism to the park, that happens. Some of our parks are just really well used. If you go up to Bradley Lake, it's just well used, here in Pioneer Park. And then some security, real or perceived threats along the Riverwalk Trail that we hear about as well. So some strategic priorities and initiatives to promote play, active recreation, and well-being for the entire Puyallup community. And some of those key performance indicators are program participation rate, our program fill rate, and our customer return rate. And I'll just talk about that for just a second. We just have a phenomenal, like I said, our return rate and our fill rate. We have waiting lists for a lot of our sports leagues. Our summer day camp sold out within, 12 hours, the day it opened last week. And so in our preschool, the same thing. We just have a really strong recreation programming. This year, some of our initiatives is to launch a no-fee Healthy Puyallup initiative. And so one of the things we're going to do is run a 10-week program in Pioneer Park. In the morning, Doug's team is going to offer some Tai Chi and some Zumba out in the park and free to the community. And then we're also partnering with a couple of downtown businesses. So Wolfheart and is it Piranha Yoga? Piranha Yoga are going to offer some free yoga and some free fitness classes this summer out in the park. So we're really looking forward to that. We're continuing our partnership and trying to strengthen our partnership with Pierce County Parks and our Adventure Within Reach program. That's for adults with disabilities. And so we're going to offer some special, the Special Olympics programs at our parks. And then also at the Activity Center, host some dances and some social gatherings as well. So we're looking forward to that. A connected park and trail system and well-maintained public facilities. And so we're looking at keeping the momentum going on connecting the Riverwalk Trail design phase. We're 30% design for Bradley Lake out to Wildwood Park Drive. And so we all know about the Minnick property, and so we've demoed the house, and now we're kind of waiting through those last conditional use permits to get approval to build the trail down to the valley. And so we're looking forward to that. And then our Parks Department is also working on an enterprise asset management system that would track our work orders and track the ages of our assets and, be able to tell the story a little better about our aging infrastructure and what our needs are. Enhancing the department's service delivery and information sharing capacity. This is kind of what we talked about as far as marketing as well, and really upgrading our social media engagement. And one thing that both Doug and Dion have been really on board with is bringing back our catalog, telling people what we're doing, updating our social media after events, and really telling the story about what's going on in our community and what's going on with Parks and Recreation. And then we also are looking at refreshing the department's branding and visuals and kind of coming up with a comprehensive marketing plan. Sustainability through financial planning and resource management. Some of the things we're talking about is cost recovery within our programming and our grant and sponsorship success rate. So we were successful in getting the AWC Energy Audit Grant that complies with the state Department of Commerce energy audits. And so we will be performing those this year. And we're also going to be pursuing a local parks maintenance grant for Bradley Lake Park's inclusive playground feature to replace that in the next coming years. And then also talking about expanding partnerships with our private organizations and businesses for concerts in the park and some of our community events as well. And that's it. And this is good timing. Van Leeuwen Park is in the picture, and we are starting construction on the playground at Van Leeuwen Park next week. any questions.
Councilmember Johnson, I'm going to go to Councilmember Whitting. He hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll come straight to you. Is that okay? Sure. Yeah, Councilmember Whitting.
Gee whiz, get priority, huh?
Well, I second bite at the apple with Councilmember Johnson, so I just want to make sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation for all the work you're doing. You've got a lot on your plate, but you know the old adage, it's never enough.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pass along a comment from one of my constituents that there was some concern about the ball fields at Wildwood Park expressed regarding parking when they've got two ball games going on simultaneously, and those when two games are ending and two games are starting, there just isn't enough parking in that vicinity. And I had the bright idea, and I don't know if it has any legs, but the east end of Wildwood Park has a big open area there that adjoins Stonegate, and it would seem like we might be able to put in a parking in the little trail to get people from there up to the ball fields. Just a thought. But you know, I expect you to walk on water, so at least walk through the woods.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know that's been explored, and I know that Dion has stopped scheduling those later, the second half of those doubleheaders to avoid the parking situation. So I think we're done with that for now, right, Dion? Yeah, occasionally.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Cody, yeah, I mean, you know, Puyallup loves their parks, and I think the council has done a fantastic job of supporting that and prioritizing that, and had good staff that take that vision and run with it. But I don't think we've reached a plateau. I think we continue to strive and grow and become more vibrant and not be satisfied with just attaining. And I think that we're moving that direction. So I want to just overview, touch on a few things that you stated, just for talking points, stimulate ideas. I mean, you know, you're the guy, you're the director, and so you take, you know, direction from council through city manager Steve as the, you know, point and CEO. But you know, I'd love to see if there was some branding. You know, Talika had mentioned that, you know, there's no other city our size that has a strategic plan. That's pretty unique. But, and I think Mayor mentioned we have perhaps up to 18 parks, you know. It'd be fun to find out what the ratio is. You know, Puyallup has more parks in Puget Sound than any other city our size. Whatever that is, some kind of a bragging right that would highlight that we distinguish ourselves as a lot of parks and trails, whatever that is. Be fun to find some kind of bragging points that we can kind of build around or focus on that would not only make us appreciate what's here, but stimulate us to grow that, right? Yeah. So anyway, it'd be fun to see, you know, what kind of branding that we could do to enhance and highlight our park system, but also stimulate and grow that. And that could be through some one-liner branding ideas. So I'd love to see that. I'd like to see some designation. You know, we were pretty fortunate to be we were the very first city in the nation that was classified as age-friendly. Now, I don't know if there's any classification for parks like premier parks, that we are a city of premier parks. And if there's not, let's create a designation that we are a city that is premier parks and brand ourselves. But I'd love to see us highlight that we're a tree city and a bee city and all that stuff. But man, we really should be highlighting our parks as kind of a stimulus to really generate and highlight what we're doing and to grow that. So I'd love to see some kind of highlighting on that. You mentioned some staffing. Sometimes it's tough with staffing, and it's kind of some of the challenges when you have those 4 squares. I'd like to suggest something that might be an idea that you could consider. And again, this is just kind of high level. You would be able to interpret, you know, how much of this is doable or you know, helpful. But, you know, in a negative context, you know, we have neighborhoods that have kind of crime problems. They've formed this kind of block watch, and the neighbors get together and they kind of look out for each other. But, what if you had surrounding parks and you engage the neighbors that live around that park to be stewards of that park? And you had this program that people live around Sam Peach Park that maybe they are empowered to, that's kind of their turf. They live there, they have a vested interest there, and maybe you could form this kind of co-op of neighbors in that circle that could say, hey, we want to pick up trash on Saturdays, we want to prune or rake some leaves, or whatever that is. That could take off staff's, kind of man hours, but also empower them to feel stewards of their own neighborhood park, right? So that would be kind of fun, and we see some models of that with Adopt a Trail. It would be fun to take that Adopt a Park and cater that marketing around those that live in that area as kind of this stewardship of the park and have some ownership, and to empower staff. For every staff member you have, if you get 20 people showing up, that gets done awfully quick, and they feel pretty good about, kind of owning their park and their neighborhood. So that would be kind of one fun way that might help with staffing and also get community buy-in to really respect and care for the park that they take for granted sometimes, but now they have a place in there. And then the other thing, lastly, I just want to say personally from me to you, I'm not giving you any direction by any means, that's not my job, but if perhaps I might be able to inspire, because it's intended to do that. You've been here about how long now?
Just under 2 years.
Yeah, so it's still pretty kind of, you're getting some roots underneath you, you're kind of getting your feet kind of grounded. I would just, really challenge you, not that you're not doing it, but I would just say, man, look for opportunities to become more aggressive, more visionary, more, kind of cheerleading this thing, because we're looking to you to really tell us what we can do to support you. Bring back ideas and give us a chance to support or fund it. But really take strong leadership. And I know that Steve hired you for a reason. I think it was a great hire. But I would just inspire you to, man, just be bold and take this thing to the next level, because I think that the potential is super great. And I think under your leadership and your staff, there's a lot more that we could do. And it's not, our job to kind of tell you what you should be doing. We just want to empower and inspire you and empower you to bring back ideas. And if they sound great, let's get behind it and empower it and fund it. So that would be my hope for you, because you're in a really coveted role. Yeah. People love, they would love to be the parks director. That's a pretty, especially in Puyallup. And so you got this really unique opportunity. And so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your staff. Take strong leadership, take it to the next level. And I think you'll find that the council, for the most part, is going to be more than supportive as you bring us back ideas. We want to get behind it because we want our parks to be successful. And you're the guy that is at the helm of the ship on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Cody, I appreciate this plan. Talika, you are a rock star. We appreciate you and all that you do. And you guys did a great job going through this thing. I do want to speak to Dion. So our parks are where lifelong relationships are made. And I can speak back to way before I was on council, a baseball team that Dion and I had some engagement on, and those relationships are still in existence today. And the parents are, some of them are on the other side of the country, but I still see them. And I think that's a testament to our Parks Department and the programs that we offer. And I think that when it gets down, Dion's not going to talk to me anymore after this. I think that when it gets down to it, and there was some issues, and Dion facilitated resolving those things. I just want to shout out to Dion, and he's hiding, but he is a legend. And when you said you're going to introduce him, I don't know who in Puyallup does not know Dion and the programs that he puts on. And Bill, thank you for your work. I know your name. It's nice to see your face. But whenever I hear that there's an issue, it's like, oh, I'll let Bill know. So now I know who Bill is. So you are a legend in the name, but thank you for the face.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all those suggestions. I would just, interesting, Councilmember Johnson, you mentioned forming organizations like Friends of Sam Peach Park or Neighbors for whatever name you would give that. Those are all really, I think, kind of really good ideas. It's interesting that they usually start with an individual, like Renee Muir, who was here earlier, started Pretty Up Puyallup. But that took an individual coming forward and saying, I want to do that, And now we're all behind her. We've had a proclamation. She, I think, gets funding from the Main Street Association. So I say that because if there's anyone out there this evening who is watching this meeting and says, boy, that is a great idea, I would encourage them to take that initiative, because your plate's pretty full to start a whole entire new program. But if volunteers came forward and said, we want to do it, and we'll do the legwork, I really am very confident we would facilitate that. And on the council, we would do whatever it would take to facilitate it. So I say that because if anybody is out there listening or observing us and wants to do that, by golly, contact one of us, and we'll do our best to make it happen. So with that, any further comments, or would you have any closing?
No, I will just say that we are very lucky in Puyallup. We do have a lot of unofficial stewards in our parks that are doing cleanup work, that do that just kind of in the background and, let us know, hey, we need this or that. And they are out there. So we could organize it and the interest is there and they're already out there doing it. So we're very lucky here.
Thank you. And could you give me the number of parks? Because we have pocket parks, we have the gardens. There's all kinds of. How many do we have?
Many do you want to? Yeah. How are official and coming on? So we're at 19 right now.
19. Okay. All right. And okay. Thank you. My message has got to be consistent. Boy, Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, can I get an update? Because as long as we're talking about parks, thank you for letting me be, kind of stimulate my discussion and humoring me. And I hope it's all relative to the topics tonight. But is there any update on this kind of blueberry one over that we're doing? Any trail? Is there any update on that?
From the valley floor, the old Blueberry
blueberry
farm, going up through the Minnick property. To Wildwood Park.
Right. Any updates on that? That's a new park in the making or something, isn't it?
Yep. And the house has been demoed. So the Minnick property is kind of a field right now. We're still trying to locate the septic tank out there. But other than that, the house has been demoed. And then we're working with Multicare right now to work through the easement process and get the conditional use permit submitted.
Great.
So we're getting closer.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you, park staff, for being here this evening. Appreciate that very much. Thank you, Talika, for your input. So we're now going to move on to the city manager's report. Steve Kirkley, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. No meeting next Tuesday. Then you have a study session on April 15th. At this point, the items that we'll be bringing to you are an update on the Good Samaritan Multi-Care Master Plan process. There will be a presentation on the Stormwater Comprehensive Plan. This is not the state-required comprehensive plan. This is our utility stormwater comprehensive plan, and then an update by the police department on their drone program. So that's for the study session on April 15th. Council, just to let you all know and the community that next Tuesday, April 8th at 2 p.m. At the Pavilion, Pioneer Park Pavilion, there will be a ceremony. The United States Army Special Operations Command will be presenting a Medal of Heroism to Staff Sergeant Brian Black's family. If you recall, Staff Sergeant Black was killed in action in Africa back in 2017 in the city in 2017 and 18. Dedicated a couple memorial chess tables in the Pioneer Park and a plaque in our memorial plaza there in Pioneer Park. And so the family will be having a ceremony along with the United States military, 2 p.m. next Tuesday at the Pavilion across in Pioneer Park. If the weather cooperates, they would like to have it on the stage, rotary stage. So we'll see how the weather is on that. And just one final thing. We have received word from our state lobbyists that the state, the Senate and House capital budgets both have funding for the 4th Street stormwater projects. Of course, the budgets have not been approved, as you know, but both the Senate and House capital budgets include a $773,000 appropriation for the 4th Street stormwater project. And then the Senate transportation budget includes provision for the Meeker Festival Street. Those, of course, the session is not concluded yet, but both of those projects are in those respective portions of the state budget. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now go into council member reports. Council member Adler, you're calling from the East Coast, or you're on, I believe, from the East Coast. You give the report first, and then you are free to go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm bringing up my notes here. I am in Washington, D.C. once again for my day job, and was on the Hill today, and sometimes I do very much wish that I was right there next to you all instead of sitting here today. But nonetheless, I am sorry to have missed out on the presentation of the proclamations that were issued today. I have appreciated the opportunity to work on the 2 college appreciation weeks for the WSU Recreation Extension Center, or Research and Extension Center, excuse me, and Pierce College Puyallup. And so it is the first year that we have broken up our appreciation weeks. The proclamation issued today is to kick off more of a Pierce College Puyallup Appreciation Month. And so I quickly just wanted to highlight some of the things that the city is doing in support of that and to support Pierce College Puyallup. And I also want to thank our city clerk, Dan, for all of his hard work, as well as Eric, in helping coordinate many meetings and the planning and the details, and ensuring that we have some programming that the public can join us for in celebration of Pierce College. There is a promotional video for the events that I'm going to mention here shortly that will be shared along with an article in the city newsletter that I hope folks will be willing to share so we can get support for our events. Similar to what we had in the fall with the WSU Research and Extension Center, we had an event at the fair, and I'm very pleased and grateful to report that the fair is partnering with us and Pierce College for the spring fair, and we're going to have a similar type of event called the Raiders Rally at the fair, which will be on April 18th beginning at 3 p.m. Pierce College will have a variety of performances that afternoon, along with meet and greets with athletes from several of their sports teams. And then there will also be an evening open house event at Pierce College Puyallup taking place on April 27th from 4:30 to 7:30. That will include an open house with tours, a scavenger hunt with Pierce College swag up for grabs, like the shirt I am wearing tonight, I am sure. And also opportunities for potential students to enroll on site for some summer classes and fall quarter. The city continues to coordinate with Pierce College and the fair to provide light refreshments for the meet and greets during the Raiders Rally, and we are also proud to pitch in and cover the cost of food trucks for the open house at the Puyallup campus. And finally, back for the Raiders Rally at the fair is giving away 300 tickets to the event on the 18th, and that information will be pushed out on how to attain those tickets as we get further into the month and we get closer to the spring fair. So again, very much appreciate my colleagues' support of these college appreciation weeks, and hope to see many of you at our events coming up this month. Otherwise, I'm coming home for 52 hours this weekend because I can't miss the Daffodil Parade, especially if the sun is going to be shining. And so I look forward to seeing you all this Saturday and finally getting to see that beautiful big yellow thing in the sky. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you participating all the way from the East Coast. Let's go with Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Councilmember Adler talked touched on the spring fair, I did want to highlight the dates for the public because it will start before our next meeting April 10th through the 13th and April 17th through the 20th. We have the Daffodil Parade here in Puyallup, as we mentioned on Saturday. And I just wanted to update on the Central Pierce merger. The ballot is out to Ording and Ording and Graham, sorry. The districts that would be dissolved are the ones that get to vote on the proposed merger. So that you won't see, you'll hear this chatter is going out and people are talking about it, but the reason that the Central Pierce residents are not voting is because their fire district is not dissolving. So I will report back on that ballot after the April 22nd results are tallied. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I just wanted to do another shout out for the Puyallup Main Street Association and all their incredible work, and I'm so glad that we gave them the B&O tax. So good job, team. I also, in line with Main Street Association, want to remind our community that the farmers market is coming back to Puyallup April 19th. Come on, friends, come and support our local farmers market people. I'll be there to buy my vegetables. Also, I'm super proud of the fact that Puyallup is a tree-friendly city. I'm really, really proud of our conservation district and how well they're doing, keeping the canopy with our trees and the delightful oxygen that we get to breathe from our trees. And so I just encourage everybody to jump in on Earth Day at Silver Creek Park to volunteer for that. And then I'll end with the fact that today is Library Giving Day, but not just today, all of April. So if it's in your desire to do so to support our library, please consider making a donation, because I'm really proud of the fact that our library is very versatile. It's not just books. Some of the things that were highlighted tonight were the teen zone that's coming in, is the children's zone that's there already, the Kiwanis provided our community. I like to rub in the fact that Rotary is putting in the teen zone, so just going to throw that out there. But the fact that, I don't know if you guys knew this, but we can actually loan out instruments. Yes, you can go to the library and borrow an instrument. So I think we do need to look at getting them a sound booth. Anyway, really proud of our library. Please consider donating this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First time I've talked tonight, so got to break the silence. I don't know why. It's one of those weird nights where I didn't have any coffee. I don't know why. I'm just extra engaged.
We've got about an hour. So
okay, good. Keep going. So, hey, I just wanted to say again, I don't know, it's been stated before, but really deep appreciation for the Main Street Association. I've come to really appreciate them more and more as the years go by, and that we can see that energy and synergy is growing, and it's good for our community, and it's wonderful. And as mentioned, the Daffodil Parade, that's such a great family event. If you have children, you have children, grandchildren, nieces or singles come out, and it's a great community event. The temperature's supposed to be 69. So let's hope for that. That'll be a fun. Usually, most of them are just freezing rain, so it's no fun. I also want to another community event coming up. Anybody old enough to remember the cruising the Loop in Puyallup, the car cruise and cruising the Loop? I kind of remember that. I'm old enough to remember that. The car cruise, the Puyallup car cruise, is back and up and running, and their first cruise in the Puyallup cruise is April 26th. So, whenever they hold those, if you haven't been, come down and check it out. It's really neat. They're very well-respected folks that aren't doing crazy stuff. They cruise the big loop, and there's people all up and down the sidewalk of Meridian and that back street, whatever that one is back there, and just lined up with chairs, people engaging the small-town feel of the car cruise. Fantastic. And then I want to bring up another activity coming up. It's still about a month off. May 8th, the Pierce County Prayer Breakfast is holding their 46th annual prayer breakfast, and this year, as it's going to continue for years, it's going to be held right here at the Washington State Fairgrounds It's the largest prayer breakfast in the state of Washington. I just came from the governor's prayer breakfast, met our new governor and the lieutenant governor here a couple of weeks ago. But this is probably about 10 times larger, and it's the largest one in Pierce County. About 1,500 people that show up. We have a lot of elected officials there and judges and many business owners and folks in the faith-based community. That's coming up on May 8th at 6 a.m. You can go on the Pierce County Prayer Breakfast and get more information on registration or whatever. So I want to talk about that. And other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Oh, and a shout out to Marla. Where's the camera here? Is this one here? This one? There it is. Shout out to Marla. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Whitting.
I'll pass.
Okay. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lots of great and exciting things coming to Puyallup through April. Daffodil Parade, as mentioned, Spring Fair, car cruise, but more importantly, I am excited to share with all of our colleagues the new development coming to our city. Even our city manager doesn't even know about this, or our attorney, so stay tuned about that. But after months of quiet negotiations, we have agreed in principle to construct a scenic gondola system running from downtown Puyallup all the way to South Hill Mall. The gondola will feature Wi-Fi, pet-friendly cabins, and optional karaoke. Hello. We're going to call it the Puyallup Skyway. Of course, all of this is contingent on final approval by the Ministry of Urban Aerial Transport, which doesn't exist. So happy April Fools, everyone, and have a great week.
Yeah, I think, you should have brought it to a vote. We would have definitely passed it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor King, for that kind of stroll down fantasy lane. Okay, Mayor's report, very brief. The parade, folks, just so everyone knows, starts at 12:45 in Puyallup. Puyallup always has, of course, the parade. When people think of the Daffodil Parade, they think of Puyallup. And we have probably 10 thick people in certain areas of people congregating around Meridian. It is the place to be. I would encourage people to really focus on our next meeting that we have. It is just a study session, but one of the items really I think is very intriguing, and that's the use of drones. Drones are becoming a greater part of our life here in the United States. In fact, I was just reading a Wall Street Journal article that talks about hundreds of thousands of these going into being implemented in the next 5 years. You will not even recognize our skyscape in 5 years from now. Amazon is working on a particular drone, and they'll be using hundreds of thousands of these that drop your package from 15 feet. There's like 4 or 5 other companies that are food delivery, you name it. Drones are, they're being facilitated, kind of deregulated in some respects. I mean, they're regulated, but they're being very prolific, the federal government in their allowance. And I think it's going to just change how we view privacy, how we view delivery. It's much less expensive to use one of those than use a car to deliver packages. Well, anyway, we're going to be talking about drones in the context of law enforcement. And I just think it's going to be very intriguing. They've been able to facilitate much more efficient use of law enforcement by the use of drones. And we're going to have just a very kind of a study session. That's what it's called, study session. And we're having that in 2 weeks' time from now. So I look forward to that. With that, I think everyone here has really announced everything that I could certainly come up with this evening. And I want to thank all staff for the presentations. A very productive evening. And I'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Thank you.